The reason we're in a pub, by the way, the reason we're in a pub, would have liked to have hired Manchester City Hall, as you would have thought an MEP would have been able to hire Manchester City Hall, but unfortunately, whilst the officials there at Manchester City Hall are prepared to let facilities out to those people out there, the UAF, they will not allow the British National Party to hire Manchester City Hall. So make of that what you will.
Can I just have your name, sir?
It's Simon Darby, I'm the Deputy Leader of the British National Party, and what we've got today, press conference with a difference. This chap here needs no introduction, obviously, is the new North West Region MEP, Nick Griffin, in the heart of his constituency. You're going to be seeing a lot more of this chap. You probably saw what happened down in London yesterday when, outside Westminster, we were attacked and assaulted by various left-wing elements. And thankfully we're inside now. That's not going to happen today, we don't think. But without much ado, Nick Griffin, ladies and gentlemen, ask what you want.
Yes, Simon, thank you very much. Before we start questions, I do just want to make a point, as much for our TV station, bnptv, which is watched by at present 100,000 people a day. So we're not on the par with some of you, but we've got a major reach. And if you're not going to put this material across, the public will see it through our new media. And that is that the mob outside there, who were throwing eggs and rocks at myself, my colleagues, Andrew Bronze, and various press reporters yesterday, are not an isolated group of far left-wing freaks. They are organised by people who are firmly supportive of the Labour Party. A number of Labour councils, including in the north east of England and in Stoke, give them money, give them taxpayers' money, purely to oppose the British National Party, which we regard as a disgrace. But if you would care to go online and look at the UAF website, you will find that among the people who are signed up to the objectives and the methods of the mob out there are, among others, the usual suspects such as Ken Livingstone, Peter Hain, Barbara Follett, who you remember was caught out spending £25,000 of our money on security because she didn't feel safe in London. Well, she knows how many Londoners feel then. Keith Vaz, Ian Gibson, Harry Cohen, Anthony Steele, a whole rogues gallery of people who've had their snouts in the trough have been caught out about it. Parties from all, politicians from all the main political parties. In particular, David Cameron is partway down the list. The leader of the official opposition, the leader of a party which calls itself Conservative, and is supposed to stand for British values, including freedom of speech and democracy. And that mob is not about freedom of speech. It's about using violence and intimidation to prevent us getting our views across, my constituents listening, and you being able to ask questions. And I challenge David Cameron again to withdraw his support from this violent far-left mob, or accept that he's happy that Britain should now be twinned with Zimbabwe. Right, questions? What have you got for me?
Mr. Griffin, run through your policies for us, just as a part of the history of what you hope to achieve in the next 5 years. I mean, specifically, what are your actual policies? And give us a little outline of how you think you're going to affect things.
Okay, well, the first one or two MEPs don't affect things to a huge amount in the European Parliament. Part of our gripe as a party with being in Brussels is that it's undemocratic, it's ruled by unelected bureaucrats. So we will do what we can to slow down the advance of rule by the unelected bureaucrats and protect British interests. But that's going to be difficult. One of the first things I want to take to Brussels is a very important issue. We've had a whole team of researchers for the last few months working on the issue of what is behind the drive to privatise Britain's public services. This is a huge fraud against the public purse. It's the theft of vast amounts of the common wealth of this country. Everything from the Ministry of Defence's research department, through the railways, through now the post office, in due course through to the NHS. And this is an agenda driven by multinational corporations for greed and profit. And we have no doubt whatsoever, we've got enough evidence already, that there are various MPs and past MEPs who, while the public have been worrying about if they're spending taxpayers' money on a porn film or a bath plug, have actually been showering huge amounts of money for being involved in this giant looting of Britain. It's the biggest theft of the British Commonwealth since the theft of the Commons from the people of England in the 17th century and since the Highland clearances in the 18th and 19th century. And we are going to have our researchers in Brussels because a lot of the pressure, the drive for this, comes from the corporation's lobbying machine in Brussels, which is there are more lobbyists per square inch in Brussels than anywhere else in the world except Washington DC. And they've been lobbying for this, and they've been buying politicians. We're going to get into the archives, we're going to find out more about it, and we are going to put a case to the police to send these corrupt politicians to prison.
When I interview other politicians, leaders, we aren't taken to secret locations and then told to go to another one where there's lots of police and protesters. What do you make of that?
It's outrageous, isn't it? I trust you are deeply and bitterly hurt and offended by that mob out there denying you your right to come here easily and simply. Yeah, we should be in Manchester Town Hall. We asked if we could use a room in Manchester Town Hall, which would be normal. You know where it was, it would be easy. No, Manchester Town City Council won't let us go there. They've concocted a diversity policy in the last few weeks, so they say we can't go there. Despite the fact that 130,000 plus people in the northwest of England have given me a mandate to speak up for them, Manchester Council won't let us there. So we tried to be open yesterday on Cottage Green, where everyone holds press conferences, and it put people at risk of serious injury. As I say, when you had John Cruddas, a Labour MP, saying that it's gone too far to have people throwing eggs and rocks, then you really do know it's gone too far. It's a great shame, but don't blame me, blame the far left out there and the politicians of all three main parties who have signed up to that mob. Yes?
Aaron Fansari, BBC News. You must accept that there is a real problem here, that as a directly elected MEP, it's very difficult for you to do your job and for you to get your message across because of what's happening.
I do accept that, and I thank you for pointing it out like that. I hope that everyone here accepts it as well. You know, like us or not, we have a democratic, legitimate mandate, and we've been given that in many cases by people who have specific concerns they feel only we will address properly. And if we're not allowed to deal with these things openly and properly, it could cause problems. Most of all, it's one thing the far left and the Tory party and others organising a mini riot in central London. It's another thing then doing it on the street here, where there's not that many people live around here. It's fairly open. But fairly soon, I'm going to start being called in by constituents to go to the Prestons and the Burnleys and the Blackburns, and Andrew Bronze is going to be called in by people to go to places like Bradford. And unless the police and the British political class have got a grip on this mob and made it clear you can demonstrate, you can protest, but you mustn't threaten violence, you mustn't cause trouble, you mustn't provoke public disorder, then the public disorder consequences could, as I'm sure you're aware, be extremely grave indeed.
How worried are you that you're not going to be able to do your job as an MEP properly?
It does worry me. Certainly everything that has to be done at Brussels, which is probably the lion's share of the work, obviously I'm doing with no problems at all, the same as any other MEP. There's far more controversial people than me in the European Parliament on all sides of the political spectrum. In terms of visiting constituents and doing things locally, then yes, it does concern me. But again, I'm afraid that's an issue which primarily the police have to resolve, because these people are entitled to protest, but not in the way they're doing at the moment.
We're doing this press conference with the sound of people outside shouting, Nick Griffin is a Nazi, a racist, a fascist. Is that not true?
No, you're talking about a bunch of extreme Marxists who the Communist Party.
Why aren't you what they say you are outside?
Because they're lying. Quite simply, I'm not a racist, I'm not fascist. Fascism, if it means anything, means three things actually. Denying your opponent's freedom of speech, using and threatening violence against your opponents, which is what this mob, with the backing of all the main political parties, is doing against us and our supporters right now, and has done throughout this election campaign and for many a long year. And fascism is also about the point I raised earlier. It's about a close incestuous relationship between the governing elites and private corporations. And the fascist state that is being built in Britain is a bureaucratic state where the traditional common laws of Britain, which give us our freedoms and our liberties, are being taken away by the Brussels bureaucracy, and at the same time they're creating this incestuous relationship when this country is run not for the benefit of the people of this country, but the giant corporations.
And that is
Mussolini fascism, and it's being done under Gordon Brown.
That will be reflected in your policies that you'll take to the European Parliament. There'll be no
it most definitely
racism,
is.
no
Well, we'll deal with the race question in a moment. We're still dealing about the really important issue, which is the fact that Britain's freedom and our sovereignty, which we've had for 1,000 years or more, is hanging by a thread and it's being destroyed.